What if you walked into a place where everyone judged you by your clothes, only to reveal a secret so powerful it turned their world upside down? Welcome to the unseen hero in the gallery, a story that'll leave you speechless. Imagine a woman stepping into a glittering art gallery, dismissed as an outsider by the elite around her. But what they don't know? She's about to unleash a truth that'll shake the very foundations of their arrogance. Buckle up, because this tale of courage, prejudice, and revelation is one you won't forget. In the heart of Seattle, where the skyline shimmered with glass towers and the air carried the faint salt of Puget Sound, the Aurora Art Gallery stood as a beacon of sophistication. Its sleek, modern facade of frosted glass and steel reflected the city's ambition, while inside, the space was a temple to wealth and culture. Polished marble floors gleamed under soft, recessed lighting, casting a glow on towering canvases and delicate sculptures perched on alabaster pedestals. The air hummed with the murmur of cultured voices, the clink of champagne flutes, and the subtle scent of oud perfume wafting from patrons draped in designer silks and tailored suits. Aurora was no ordinary gallery. It was a sanctuary for the elite, where million-dollar deals were sealed over abstract expressionist paintings and where the guest list was as curated as the art itself. To step through its doors was to enter a world of privilege, one that demanded a certain look, a certain swagger, to belong. Into this rarefied atmosphere walked Amara Jackson, a 55-year-old African-American woman whose presence seemed to ripple through the gallery like a stone dropped in still water. Her faded green sweater, slightly pilled at the cuffs, hung loosely over a pair of worn black slacks, and her scuffed loafers made soft, unassuming taps on the marble floor. Her short, silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her face, etched with the lines of a life well-lived, carried a quiet strength that went unnoticed by the crowd. In her hand, she held a small leather notebook, its edges frayed from years of use, and a plain canvas tote bag slung over her shoulder contained a bottle of water, a granola bar, and a folded flyer for a local youth art program. To the casual observer, Amara looked like someone who'd wandered in by mistake, perhaps a tourist or a retiree with no business in a place like Aurora. But Amara was no stranger to high-stakes environments. She was a retired CIA operative, a woman who'd spent decades navigating the shadows of global espionage, and the founder of the Jackson Community Trust, a charity that had poured millions into arts education for underserved youth. Today, she was here on a mission not to buy art, but to evaluate Aurora as a potential venue for her trust's upcoming youth art showcase, an event that could draw national attention and transform lives. Yet, as she stepped deeper into the gallery, the weight of 100 judgmental eyes pressed against her. Ethan Palmer, a 27-year-old security guard with a buzz cut and a chip on his shoulder, was the first to zero in on Amara. His Navy uniform was crisp, the badge on his chest gleaming under the gallery's lights, but his posture screamed arrogance. Ethan had grown up in a working-class suburb, always resentful of the wealth he guarded but could never touch. To him, Aurora was a fortress to protect, and anyone who didn't fit its mold was a threat. As Amara paused to study a vibrant Basquiat-inspired canvas, her fingers tracing the air above its bold lines, Ethan's eyes narrowed. Her clothes, her tote bag, her very presence, they didn't belong. He adjusted his radio, muttering something to a colleague, and strode toward her with the confidence of a man who believed he held all the power. "Hey, ma'am," he called, his voice sharp enough to cut through the gallery's hum. "You need to step back from the artwork. This isn't a public museum." Amara turned, her dark eyes meeting Ethan's with a calm that unsettled him. "I'm just looking," she said, her voice low and steady, carrying a warmth that contrasted with the chill in his tone. "Could you tell me about this piece?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard by her composure. Most people he confronted, tourists, stragglers, either flustered or backed away. But Amara stood her ground, her gaze unwavering, and it irritated him. "Look," he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a condescending drawl, "these pieces are worth more than you'd make in a lifetime. If you're not buying, you shouldn't be touching anything." A few patrons nearby turned, their lips curling into smirks, and Ethan's chest puffed out, emboldened by their approval. Vanessa Holt, the gallery's curator, caught the exchange from across the room. At 35, Vanessa was a rising star in Seattle's art scene. her sleek bob and tailored blazer projecting an image of effortless authority. She prided herself on curating not just art, but the entire Aurora experience. Every guest, every interaction had to scream exclusivity. To her, Amara was a blemish on that perfection. She glided over, her heels clicking like a metronome, and fixed Amara with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Is there a problem here, Ethan?" she asked, her eyes flicking over Amara's sweater with thinly veiled disdain. Ethan straightened, eager to impress. "Just making sure she's not causing trouble, Miss Holt. She's been lingering too long." Amara's jaw tightened, but her expression remained serene. "I'm here to evaluate your gallery for an event," she said, her tone measured. "I'd like to speak with someone about your rental policies." Vanessa's smile faltered, replaced by a look of incredulity. "An event?" she repeated, her voice laced with mockery. "This isn't a community center, ma'am. Our venue is reserved for serious clients, collectors, philanthropists, not—" She trailed off, gesturing vaguely at Amara's outfit, letting the implication hang in the air. A soft chuckle rippled through the crowd, and Amara felt the sting of their judgment, but she refused to flinch. Lila Nguyen, a 19-year-old art student volunteering at the gallery, watched the scene unfold from behind a display of glass sculptures. Her shy demeanor and oversized cardigan made her nearly invisible to the gallery's elite, but her heart raced as she saw Amara's treatment. Lila had grown up in a working-class Vietnamese-American family, and she knew what it felt like to be dismissed. Ms. Holt?" Lila ventured, her voice trembling. "Maybe we could show her the event brochure?" Vanessa's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. "Lila, stay out of this. Go check the guest list." Lila hesitated, her hands twisting nervously, but she nodded and stepped back, her gaze lingering on Amara with quiet sympathy. The confrontation drew the attention of Mr. and Mrs. Carver, a wealthy couple in their late 50s who were regular patrons of Aurora. Mrs. Carver, her neck dripping with pearls, leaned toward her husband, her voice carrying just enough to be heard. "She looks like she's here to clean the place, not host an event." Mr. Carver, his pinstripe suit immaculate, chuckled, nodding in agreement. Their words were a spark, igniting whispers among the other patrons, and Ethan seized the moment to escalate. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave," he said, his hand resting on his radio as if it were a weapon. "You're making people uncomfortable." Amara's eyes darkened, but her voice remained steady. "Uncomfortable?" she repeated, her tone sharp enough to cut through the gallery's pretense. "I'm a customer, just like anyone else. Your job is to assist, not accuse." Ethan's face reddened, his ego bruised by her defiance. "Don't tell me how to do my job," he snapped, stepping closer, his voice loud enough to draw every eye in the room. "People like you come in here to cause trouble, looking around, touching things you can't afford. I know your type." The word type hung heavy, laced with prejudice, and a gasp rippled through the crowd. Lila's hands clenched, her instinct to intervene warring with her fear of Vanessa's wrath. Vanessa, sensing this situation spiraling, stepped in, her smile now a thin veneer of control. "Let's keep this civil," she said, addressing Amara as if she were a child. "If you're serious about an event, you'll need to provide credentials. We don't just let anyone book Aurora." Her words were a challenge meant to expose Amara as a fraud, and the Carvers nodded approvingly. "Mrs. Carver whispered, she's probably scamming them." And the crowd's murmurs grew louder, their judgment a palpable weight. Amara's patience was fraying, but she refused to let their prejudice win. "I'd like your badge number, Mr. Palmer," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Ethan froze, his bravado faltering. "What?" he stammered, caught off guard. "And yours, Ms. Holt," Amara added, her gaze locking onto Vanessa's. The curator's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of unease. "This is ridiculous," Vanessa said, but her voice lacked conviction. Ethan, recovering, scoffed. "You don't get to make demands here. Leave, or I'm calling the cops." The gallery was now a theater, every patron a spectator in this unfolding drama. Lila, still hovering near the sculptures, felt a surge of courage. "She's not doing anything wrong," she blurted, her voice shaking but clear. Vanessa's head whipped toward her, eyes blazing. "Lila, one more word, and you're done here." Lila's face fell, but her outburst had shifted the room's energy, drawing sympathetic glances from a few patrons who'd begun to question the fairness of the scene. Amara, unmoved by the threats, reached into her tote bag and pulled out an old scuffed flip phone, a relic that drew snickers from the Carvers. "What's she gonna do, call her lawyer?" Mr. Carver muttered, and the crowd tittered. But Amara's focus was unbreakable. She dialed a number, her movements deliberate, and spoke in a voice that carried an authority no one expected. "Regina, it's Amara. I'm at Aurora Art Gallery in Seattle. I need you here now." She hung up, her eyes never leaving Ethan's, and the gallery fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound that betrayed her nerves. "Who's Regina? Your imaginary friend?" Ethan, emboldened, stepped closer, his hand now gripping his radio. "You've got 5 seconds to walk out, or I'm escorting you myself." The Carvers nodded, their smugness intact, but Lila's eyes were wide, sensing something extraordinary was about to unfold. Mrs. Carver whispered, "She's bluffing," but her husband's smirk faltered, a flicker of doubt creeping in. Amara stood her ground, her faded sweater suddenly seeming less ordinary, her presence radiating a quiet power that unnerved the room. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice low but resonant, like a storm gathering on the horizon. The gallery's chandeliers seemed to dim, the marble floors less imposing, as every eye locked onto this unassuming woman who refused to be cowed. Who was Amara Jackson, and who had she called? The answer was moments away, and it would change everything. The stage was set, the curtain rising on a revelation that would leave Aurora Art Gallery and everyone in it forever altered. The Aurora Art Gallery was a pressure cooker, its polished marble floors and glittering chandeliers now a backdrop to a showdown that had every patron on edge. Amara Jackson stood in the center of the storm, her faded sweater and worn slacks a stark contrast to the opulence around her. Yet her calm radiated a power that made the air crackle. Ethan Palmer, the young security guard, gripped his radio, his face flushed with a mix of anger and unease, while Vanessa Holt, the curator, tried to mask her growing panic behind a brittle smile. The crowd-wealthy patrons, art collectors, and a few curious onlookers watched in rapt silence, their phones quietly recording the scene. Lila Nguyen, the teenage volunteer, clutched a stack of brochures, her eyes darting between Amara and the gallery's glass doors, where something monumental was about to unfold. Amara's cryptic phone call had shifted the room's energy, and the name Regina hung in the air like a loaded promise. Mr. and Mrs. Carver, the snobbish collectors, whispered bets about Amara's bluff, but their smirks faltered, a seed of doubt taking root. The gallery was no longer a sanctuary of exclusivity, it was a stage, and Amara was about to steal the spotlight. The doors swung open with a soft whoosh, and in strode director Regina Cole, a woman whose presence silenced the room without a word. At 58, Regina was a force of nature, her tailored navy pantsuit hugging her athletic frame, her silver hair cropped in a sleek pixie cut that framed a face both commanding and serene. Her badge, identifying her as the head of the National Arts Council, glinted under the gallery's lights, and the two security officers flanking her carried an air of quiet authority, their radios crackling softly. Regina's dark eyes scanned the room, landing on Amara with a mix of respect and urgency. "Amara," she said, her voice deep and resonant, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I got here as fast as I could. What's going on?" The crowd parted instinctively and Ethan's hand froze on his radio, his bravado crumbling under Regina's gaze. Vanessa's smile vanished, her heels clicking nervously as she took a step back. Lila's jaw dropped, the brochure slipping slightly in her hands, while the Carvers exchanged uneasy glances, their whispers dying out. Amara's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, but her eyes were steel. "Thank you, Regina," she said, her voice steady, carrying the weight of decades spent in high-stakes missions. "I came to Aurora to evaluate it for my charity's youth art showcase, but I've been treated like a criminal." Her words landed like a thunderbolt, and the gallery's hum of chatter dissolved into a stunned silence. Ethan's face paled, his badge number, SG392, suddenly feeling like a target on his chest. Vanessa's hands trembled, her curated facade cracking as she realized the gravity of Amara's claim. "A criminal?" Regina repeated, her brow arching as she turned to Ethan. "Care to explain, young man?" Ethan stammered, his voice barely audible. I I thought she was suspicious, ma'am. She didn't look like our usual clients." The admission hung heavy, and a murmur rippled through the crowd, some patrons shifting uncomfortably as their own prejudices were laid bare. Regina's eyes narrowed and she turned to Vanessa. And you, as curator, allowed this? Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it, her mind racing for an excuse. Ms. Jackson didn't present credentials, she said, her voice thin and defensive. We have standards to maintain. Regina's laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. Standards? You mean prejudice. Amara Jackson is a retired CIA operative, a decorated hero who saved countless lives, and the founder of the Jackson Community Trust, which has transformed Seattle's youth through art. And you thought she didn't belong? The revelation hit like a shockwave. Lila gasped, her brochures tumbling to the floor, while the Carvers froze. Mrs. Carver's pearls suddenly seeming garish against her flushed cheeks. Mr. Carver's smirk was gone, replaced by a look of dawning shame. Ethan's knees buckled slightly, his radio slipping from his hand, and Vanessa's face drained of color, her heels wobbling as if the marble floor had turned to quicksand. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, phones raised higher, capturing every word. Amara stepped forward, her presence commanding the room without effort. I didn't come here to be judged by my clothes, she said, her voice low but resonant, each word an indictment. I came to give this gallery a chance to be part of something meaningful, a showcase for young artists who've never had a platform. But you, Mr. Palmer, accused me of stealing. And you, Ms. Holt, humiliated me in front of your patrons because I didn't fit your image of wealth. Lila, emboldened by Amara's strength, found her voice. It's true, she said, her voice shaking but clear, stepping out from behind the sculptures. I heard Ms. Holt earlier saying people like her shouldn't be allowed in. She told me to ignore her. The crowd gasped, and Vanessa's eyes widened, her composure shattering. That's a lie, she snapped, but her voice cracked, betraying her guilt. Lila stood her ground, her cardigan no longer a shield, but a badge of courage. I'm not lying, she said, her gaze meeting Amara's. I saw how they treated you from the start. Regina nodded, her expression grim. We're recording this, she said, gesturing to a security officer's body cam, its red light blinking ominously. Ms. Holt, Mr. Palmer, anything to add? Ethan's bravado was gone, replaced by panic. I didn't know who she was, he pleaded, his voice high and desperate. I was just doing my job. Amara's eyes darkened, her calm unbroken. Your job isn't to judge people by their appearance, she said. It's to protect, not persecute. Vanessa, sensing the situation slipping away, tried to salvage her position. Ms. Jackson, let's discuss this privately, she said, her tone forced and syrupy. We can offer you a private tour, a discount on any piece. Amara cut her off, her voice like a whip. I don't want your art. I wanted your partnership, but you've shown me what Aurora stands for: exclusion, not excellence. Mr. Carver, his arrogance deflated, cleared his throat. Miss Jackson, We misjudged you, he said, his voice shaky. We're sorry. Mrs. Carver nodded, her pearls clinking softly, her eyes avoiding Amara's. The crowd's mood shifted, some patrons whispering apologies, others filming with renewed intensity. Amara acknowledged the Carvers with a nod, but her focus remained on Ethan and Vanessa. This isn't just about me, she said, her voice rising, addressing the entire gallery. It's about every person who's walked through these doors and been made to feel less than. Your standards are a cover for prejudice, and I won't let it stand. Regina stepped forward, her badge catching the light. Amara was considering Aurora for a showcase that would have brought millions in exposure and funding, she said, her voice cold. But your actions have disqualified you. Unless you commit to immediate change, public apology, staff retraining, and a partnership with the Jackson Community Trust, we'll ensure these videos reach every news outlet in the country. The threat was a bombshell, and Vanessa's hands flew to her mouth, her career flashing before her eyes. Ethan's face crumpled, tears welling as he realized the weight of his mistake. The crowd's murmurs turned to outrage, phones capturing every moment of the gallery's downfall. Lila, still standing near Amara, felt a surge of pride. You're amazing, she whispered, her eyes shining. Amara's smile was brief but warm, a flicker of connection in the chaos. Regina turned to Amara, her expression softening. What's your call, Amara? She asked, deferring to her friend's judgment. Amara paused, her eyes sweeping the gallery, the chandeliers, the art, the faces now watching her with a mix of awe and shame. I'm not here to destroy lives, she said, her voice steady but firm. But actions have consequences. I want a commitment to change, or I'll make sure the world knows what happened here. She gestured to the crowd where phones were still rolling, their lenses a silent promise of accountability. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. Please, Miss Jackson, I didn't mean... But Amara raised a hand, silencing her. You meant every word, she said. The question is whether you'll learn from it. Ethan's tears fell freely now, his badge a symbol of a job he might never keep. The Carvers stood silent, their wealth no shield against their guilt. Lila's courage had sparked a shift, and the crowd's whispers grew louder, some calling for justice, others grappling with their own biases. Regina's body cam blinked steadily, recording every second, ensuring the truth would not be buried. The gallery was a battlefield, and Amara had won without raising her voice. But the war for change was far from over. Vanessa's career hung by a thread. Ethan's arrogance lay in ruins, and Aurora's reputation teetered on the edge. What would the gallery do to salvage itself? Would Amara's demand for reform be met? Or would the videos now circulating spark a reckoning beyond these walls? The stage was set for a final act, and the truth, Amara's truth, was a force no one could ignore. The Aurora Art Gallery, once a glittering fortress of exclusivity, was now a crucible of change, its marble floors and towering canvases bearing witness to a seismic shift. Amara Jackson's revelation had shattered the gallery's facade, exposing the prejudice that festered beneath its polished surface. The videos captured by patrons, grainy clips of Ethan Palmer's accusations and Vanessa Holt's condescension had exploded across social media, tagged with #Aurora scandal, and viewed millions of times. The gallery's name, once synonymous with prestige, was now a lightning rod for outrage, with boycott calls echoing from Seattle to New York. Inside the gallery, the air was thick with the aftermath of Amara's stand. Ethan, the young security guard, stood frozen, his badge a weight he could no longer bear, tears streaming down his face as the reality of his actions sank in. Vanessa, the curator, clutched the edge of a display table, her tailored blazer no shield against the collapse of her carefully curated world. Lila Nguyen, the teenage volunteer, watched with wide eyes, her courage in speaking out now a spark that illuminated the path forward. Bert and Mrs. O. Carver, the wealthy collectors, stood humbled, their earlier arrogance replaced by a quiet shame that mirrored the crowd's shifting mood. Director Regina Cole, Amara's formidable ally, loomed like a sentinel, her body cam still recording, ensuring every word, every gesture was preserved. Amara herself was the calm at the center of the storm, her faded sweater a badge of honor, her presence a testament to a power that needed no adornment. The gallery was no longer a sanctuary, it was a battleground, and the fight for justice had just begun. Amara's demand for change, a public apology, staff retraining, and a partnership with her Jackson Community Trust hung over Aurora like a guillotine. Vanessa's voice trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came, her authority eroded by the weight of her prejudice. Ethan's sobs grew louder, his hands shaking as he clutched his radio, the tool of his former bravado now a useless relic. Regina's eyes flicked to Amara, a silent question. What's next? Amara's response was measured, her voice carrying the authority of a woman who'd faced far greater threats than a gallery's elitism. I'm giving you a choice, she said, addressing Vanessa and Ethan, but speaking to the entire room. Own your mistakes and make this place better, or let the world decide your fate. She gestured to the crowd, where phones were still raised, their lenses a chorus of accountability. The message was clear. The truth was out, and it would not be silenced. Outside, the story was spreading like wildfire. Jamal Lee, a local reporter for the Seattle Sentinel, had been tipped off by a patron who'd shared a video. Jamal, a 30-year-old journalist with a knack for uncovering injustice, arrived at Aurora just as Regina's security team was dispersing the crowd. His camera crew captured the tense scene, Amara's quiet strength, Ethan's breakdown, Vanessa's desperation, and his live tweet thread went viral, amplifying the scandal to a national audience. A retired CIA hero was humiliated at Aurora Art Gallery for her appearance, Jamal wrote. Now she's demanding change. Will they listen? The hashtag #RespectNotRiches trended within hours, and comments poured in, some praising Amara's courage, others sharing their own stories of being judged unfairly. The pressure on Aurora's corporate office was immense, with emails flooding in from patrons, activists, and even rival galleries calling for accountability. Inside, Vanessa tried to salvage her position. "Ms. Jackson," she said, her voice cracking, "we can work this out. Let's sit down, discuss your event." Amara's raised hand stopped her cold. "This isn't about my event anymore," she said. "It's about the culture you've built here, a culture that dismisses people like me, like Lila, like anyone who doesn't fit your mold." Lila's cheeks flushed at the mention of her name, but she stood taller, her earlier fear replaced by a quiet pride. Regina nodded, her expression grim. "Aurora's board will hear about this," she said, her badge glinting as she spoke. "And they'll see these videos. You'd have got 4 hours to commit to Amara's terms, or we'll take this to the press." Ethan's voice broke through, raw and desperate. "I didn't know who you were," he cried, his tears falling freely. "I was just trying to protect the gallery." Amara's gaze softened, but her resolve was iron. "You didn't need to know who I was," she said. "You should have treated me like a human being." The words pierced the crowd, and Mrs. Carver stepped forward, her pearls clinking softly. "Miss Jackson, I was wrong too," she said, her voice trembling. "I judged you, and I'm sorry." "Mr.?" Carver nodded, his pinstripe suit no longer a symbol of superiority. "We'll support your cause," he added, and the crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others grappling with their own complicity. Lila, inspired by Amara's strength, spoke up again. "Ms. Holt told me to ignore people who don't look rich," she said, her voice steadier now. "It's not just today, it's how things work here." The revelation drew gasps, and Vanessa's face crumpled, her career unraveling with every word. Regina's security officer adjusted his body cam, ensuring Lila's testimony was captured. Jamal, now inside, scribbled notes furiously, his camera crew filming the exchange. The gallery was a house of cards, and Amara had pulled the first one. The next day, Aurora's corporate office, headquartered in a sleek tower downtown, was in chaos. The board, led by CEO Eleanor Grayson, held an emergency meeting as the scandal dominated headlines. Jamal's article, "The Unseen Hero Who Exposed Aurora's Prejudice," was picked up by national outlets, and protests gathered outside the gallery demanding reform. Eleanor, a pragmatic woman in her 60s, knew the stakes. Ignoring Amara's demands would tank Aurora's reputation, but complying meant admitting fault, a bitter pill for a brand built on perfection. She reached out to Amara, offering a partnership with the Jackson Community Trust and a public apology. Amara, ever strategic, accepted but with conditions. Lila's promotion, full staff retraining, and a $500,000 donation to her youth art program. Eleanor agreed, knowing she had no choice. Ethan was suspended immediately, his badge confiscated as the board launched an internal investigation. He faced a civil lawsuit for harassment, filed by Amara's legal team, who argued his actions endangered her safety and defamed her character. Vanessa was demoted to an administrative role, her dreams of curating major exhibitions shattered. The board required her to volunteer at Amara's charity for 6 months, a humbling assignment she accepted with gritted teeth. Lila, however, was the silver lining. Amara, impressed by her courage, offered her a scholarship to an art program and a mentorship role at the trust. Lila's eyes shone with gratitude, her future now brighter than she'd ever imagined. Amara moved her youth art showcase to a rival venue, the Cascade Cultural Center, a community-focused space that welcomed her vision. The event was a triumph, drawing thousands of attendees, including Jamal, who covered it live, and the Carvers, who donated generously, their earlier prejudice replaced by admiration. The showcase featured works by young artists from marginalized communities, their vibrant paintings and sculptures a testament to Amara's mission. The event raised $2 million, cementing the Jackson Community Trust's influence and earning Amara a standing ovation as she spoke about art's power to unite. In a surprising twist, Ethan appeared at the showcase, his security uniform replaced by a plain jacket. He approached Amara, his voice low and earnest. "Ms. Jackson, I was wrong," he said, his eyes red but resolute. "I want to make this right. Can I volunteer at your trust?" Amara studied him, her gaze piercing but not unkind. "Forgiveness is earned, not given," she said. "Show me you've changed." Ethan nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes, and Amara allowed him to join, knowing redemption was possible but not guaranteed. Aurora, under new scrutiny, transformed. The board implemented mandatory inclusivity training, and Lila's promotion to a junior curator role inspired other young employees. The gallery's sales dipped initially but rebounded as it embraced a broader clientele, its once exclusive aura now tempered by humility. Jamal's follow-up article, How Amara Jackson Redefined Aurora, sparked a national conversation about prejudice in cultural spaces, with other galleries adopting similar reforms. The hashtag #respect not riches became a rallying cry, and Amara's story inspired countless others to challenge injustice. Amara continued her work, mentoring Lila and countless others, her faded sweater a symbol of her unyielding integrity. She became a quiet legend in Seattle, a woman who'd faced prejudice with grace and turned it into progress. Her legacy was not in the art she curated, but in the lives she uplifted, the systems she changed, and the truth she refused to let die. The Aurora Art Gallery was no longer a fortress of elitism. It was a testament to the power of one woman's courage. Have you ever been judged for how you looked? Share your story in the comments, and let's inspire each other. Hit that subscribe button for more tales that'll change how you see the world. This is PA Storytime, and we're just getting started.